So, what do you think you're going to be remembered for?
If I'm remembered, I hope it's be for supporting education on all levels.
All right. What work have you done that you believe this will be that you will be remembered for this?
Well, I've been was on the board for both the local school district and the countywide school district for a combined total of 50 years or so. And I hope that it made a difference. I hope we were doing the right thing, getting things changed where they need to be changed, and leaving things alone where things are working fine.
You say you hope that you fix things that where they needed to be fixed, and that they and left things alone where they were perfectly fine. Do you feel like there were any mistakes that you made along those when attempting to do those things, or was it just perfect all the time?
I think trying to do something with public entities like school district, it's never perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think we accomplished a lot. I think it's something that we should be proud of, everybody that was involved with it. But perfect is a little bit out of reach.
Right, right. And and you were able to get yourself a building named after you. What do you feel like? What do you feel like the significance of that is?
I think it's a significance that comes from being involved with the whole thing as both as a buildings and grounds and teachers and so on. Getting a building named after me was very flattering. It was a complete surprise. I don't think it in itself does much except the emphasis on education.
Right, right. And so was that the goal that you had for your time in Sierra Leone? When you were in the Peace Corps, would that be accurate to say that you wanted to help to educate the people there, or?
Oh, not really educating Africans in Africa. That wasn't really the goal. But what I learned, I think, the biggest thing I learned in being in the Peace Corps was that I don't want to be a classroom teacher. I'm going to do something more with my life and something different, something additional.
So what brought you back around to being involved in education, if I may ask?
Well, my wife, Mary, was a teacher in the school district where we lived, and so she was a teacher for many years, and the things from Africa, like I said, I didn't go into that expecting to find a career choice, and I didn't find one. My career choice came after we were back in the States and trying to run, promoting schools.
Mm-hmm. And how did Grandma play into your choice to become involved with the BOCE? How did Nana get you to get involved with education?
Oh, there were various opportunities in the school districts where we were in New York, set up with elections of school board members every year. So, and our local district, one of the things that happened was there was an opening. So somebody that didn't choose to run again, and so I put my name in for an election, and I won. It's hard to tell on school board elections. It's hard to tell who's the best choice because as not being deeply involved, you don't know what many of the problems and solutions chosen with problems, or whether they were the right thing to do or not.
Mhm. Do you think Nana helped you to really discover what some of the issues were and what was perfectly fine, or do you feel like it was more just trial and error for you guys at the time?
Oh no, it's not trial and error. There's a lot of research
Mm.
and planning and
Right, right.
it goes on into making decisions in a school, for a school district. And did Mary teaching in schools, was that important? Yeah, very important. It's a way to get inside what's going on in the school district.
Mm.
Some things you think this would be a wonderful program, and you discover that for many reasons it's not. Or it needs to be changed this way or that way.
What would be a program that you feel like was an example of that really stood out as something that you thought it would work out just fine, but you had to change it later?
Oh, I think that the technology section it's a completely new thing as far as schools are concerned. When I started being on the board, we didn't have a real technology curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
But everything fell into place, so as farther we went, it became a very big part of the whole school district's effort to educate their children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you feel like that is something that will stick, that has been sustainable because of your actions, or do you feel like it's more from what you've learned from other people?
Well, I think it's more things that I was involved with the setting up first technology items and keeping it up to date as we rolled through the years, because it is an ever-changing program.
Mm-hmm.
Technology is not a done deal that you just learn it and you got it.
Right. Do you feel like if there was ever a point that, do you feel like there was ever something that you would really wish that you could go back and fix that you on during your time as the chairperson or president of that school district?
I don't know. It's hard to say what might have happened, because all these decisions, the school board has 7 people on it.
Right.
And everybody has their own opinion. So some are really helpful, some are not so helpful. But I think that working as a team as much as possible, we made big changes.
Right. What did you see as one of your more successful changes?
Well, I think getting more involved with the administration and teaching, classroom teachers. They're all things that are hard to measure, they're important, but there isn't a good, solid way to evaluate things. When you say my schools are better than your schools, prove it. It's not something that you can check off. 6 out of 10 is good, and 4 out of 10 is not good.
Right. So would you say that it has been, so on the topic of standardized testing, do you feel like that was helpful in decision making for you during your time as a chairperson, or did you not find it to be helpful at all?
It's not as helpful as you might think. Standardized testing is not a new idea. In New York, they've had it for a long time. It's called the Regents exams. And it goes back 34 years. As far as I can read into what's happened in the past and what I could expect for the future, I think that standard-based tests are important, but they aren't the be-all and end-all of evaluating a school district or a curriculum.
All right. What kind of effect do you feel like this has had on your children over the years?
Well, I think that we got them involved in being, striving for excellence or the best that can be available. And yes, I think it made quite a difference in the children. Things that they saw as important were pretty much parallel to what I thought was important. And I think that's because we were working with them and with the school.
Mm. Do you feel like that your decisions have guided them into becoming what they have become today? Like, for instance, your son Christopher is currently a teacher at a private school, and your daughter currently works as an administrative officer over at Harvard. Do you feel like your legacy has helped push them to go into those fields, or do you feel like that was more an independent choice on their part?
Well, I don't think that anything that I said and proposed was taken as a rule, and this is how we're doing it. I don't think that those two, but I think that we set up, my wife and I considered everything as part of the continuum of activities and programs, and because of that, yes, I think we did influence their view of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I noticed over this past week, as I've been spending with you here on vacation, that you've had a lot of reference material on people with autism. Do you feel like that has been because of your grandson getting diagnosed with the condition, or do you feel like that has been something that's more important from the school system? As more and more children get diagnosed with it, do you feel like that's more important for children overall, or is this a more personal matter for you?
Oh, I wouldn't consider it a personal matter. I mean, of course, has that aspect because I know somebody that is affected. But I think that most of these decisions are made for the whole spectrum of students and capabilities and so on. And, I think, yes, it makes a difference, but it's not the final determined result.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like this is something that so do you feel like if you were to have had this knowledge of what the people would, these things of different capacities and learning styles, do you feel like that was something that you had more? How do you feel like your understanding of that has changed over time as a chairperson?
Oh, when I was in school, in high school and in elementary school and so on, there was no such diagnosis available. Nobody was diagnosed as being on the spectrum because it just wasn't that much recognized as a treatable program.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I mean more like when you became the chairperson, do you feel like you had a good idea of how people how children would learn in a school environment and just didn't really change much? Or when you became the chairperson and over the years it drastically changed to how you understand it today?
Well, it certainly has affected things today by things that were made along the way, along the 30, 40 years.
Hmm.
It certainly made a difference. And I don't know, it's hard, it's very hard to measure curricula, and it's hard to measure just a school, and you can get a sense of it if you go to visit these schools, and you get a sense of the atmosphere that exists there, and the other things that without support and efforts along from the very beginning, it's certainly made a difference. And I don't take credit for changing the world,
Hmm.
there, but I went along with most of what was being proposed
Okay.
because I believed that it made a huge difference in students' lives.
All right. So would you say that you have that your understanding of how the students were being impacted by decisions? Did you originally think it would be a more concrete impact and then became more fluid over time, or was it the opposite?
I think it became more fluid over time. Certainly, it did. I don't know. It's like I said. It's so hard to measure what you've accomplished, because it's not just take a test like a math test and say,
Hmm.
okay, I'm a mathematician. Well, no, no, you're not yet. We hope you can become. If you want to be a mathematician, I hope you can be a mathematician. If you want to be a scientist, I hope you can become a scientist. And what we do in elementary and secondary school is prepare students for their life. Their life may be academic and maybe not, but that's the purpose of the schools.
Hmm. Hmm. So, do you feel like how do I ask this next one? So, over time, as you've been recognized more and more for your accomplishments, uh, how has that contrasted with your diagnosis of Parkinson's disease back in 2010, and that progressing?
Parkinson's disease is very difficult to deal with because the the psychologist that gave me the diagnosis, and we proceeded from there, was he introduced himself as Parkinson's disease, the disease that has no cause and has no solution. It kind of hits you on the head, right? And you go, when somebody that really knows about these things in detail
Hmm.
can't do anything about it. It's just not something that can be cured. It doesn't work.
Right. So has that like has it made looking back at all that you've done feel more important, as that has been what you feel like? Uh, do you feel like you're less capable now to do if you were to go back in time and had this condition back then as you do now? Do you feel like you could have still? Actually, no. Do you feel like it's what you did back then is more important as time goes on now, as you're now far older and far wiser, I would say?
Yes, I think it does make a big difference, and I think that we're doing what we can do. It isn't solving Parkinson's disease. That's not, that's up on the hilltop where we're headed, but
No, Grandpa. What I'm more and less asking is, do you feel like your accomplishments in the past, of with the school district, do you feel like that is more important now that you're getting older, or do you feel like you felt it was just as important as you feel it is now, when it was happening?
Oh, I don't think it's different in fact. You know, it's an incremental thing when you
Mm-hmm.
can do something. And it isn't going to be, when you're told there is no cure, there is no, you just have to think things through and see what you can do to make the best of the situation.
Um, do you feel like you helped people, through your time as a chairperson at the school district?
Do I think I made a difference?
Do you feel like you made a positive difference or a negative one?
Yes, I think I do. I mean, I hope I'm not deluding myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think we made a difference, and a lot more needs to be done, but it's in works.
Yeah. What do you feel like was the most important thing to you, over your entire time, uh, working for education? Do you feel like that was what do you feel like was the most? What do you feel like is never going to leave you? Your memories from that time.
Oh, some of these stories of people that have various problems, not necessarily Parkinson's disease, and the ones I know the most about are the ones that my wife Mary was involved with, and she had some terrible, terrible, difficult situations that she handled better than I could have ever done it myself. And, you know, she had some children that had one little boy that had no fingers, and another one was a girl that she couldn't feed herself, and those things. You know, those are major accomplishments. The way those worked out, the way they proceeded through their experience in school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like your time at Peace Corps impacted how you teach now? I mean, not now. During your time in the Peace Corps, do you feel like there was anything that stuck with you from there that you applied to the being a chairman uh, of the school district? Do you feel like there was anything that really stuck out, or that you know was something that was affecting what you were doing, or was that more of just an afterthought?
Well, I'm not sure I understand what your question is, but
Oh, do you feel like there was something that from Sierra Leone that kept popping back into your head while you were a chairperson? Like, if there was anything that you learned from back then that you applied as a chairperson?
I think there are things that I applied, and it's hard to say this specific thing that happened.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I don't have that kind of memory. I've never had that kind of an attack, but it was something that, you know, when we, you know, schools in Africa work with problems that you wouldn't even dream of in the States.
Mm-hmm.
And still they're making progress. I mean, they've got a long ways to go, but they are making progress, and part of that progress was the Peace Corps being there for a couple of years, and the African students had a better education experience than they would have had if the Peace Corps were not there. You know, they don't walk in and after 2 years in Africa, well, I got all the answers. Let's just do it. And it isn't like that. And if you're involved with the details, you realize that it's a bigger, much bigger problem that they have in Africa than they have in the United States. But they're working on it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to admire them for their persistence in making changes.
Mm-hmm. What changes? Do you still keep in contact with people that you volunteered with during your time at the Peace Corps?
Yes, we keep track of it. The people in our group, we had 50-some teachers in the group that trained with me and went to Sierra Leone. And we keep track, we don't see many of them very often, but we have a reunion every 5 or 10 years. And it's funny how much you pick up your conversation almost like right from when it's 5 years ago or 10 years ago. You come back to it and it's like you just left them last week.
Do you feel like you guys really do any of them feel like more or less do any of them feel did any of them really go into education afterwards besides yourself and grandma?
Yeah, there were quite a few. I don't know the number how many it is, but quite a number of them did become teachers.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like that experience in Sierra Leone was beneficial to them as teachers as they went on, or do you feel like that did not have an effect?
Oh no, I think it's a good improved not only the students but it improved the teachers, and it was a valuable experience.
Mm-hmm.
If you expect a revolution in training and schoolwork, you're not going to get that. It just isn't something that you get in 2 years. It's a whole climate that has to be adjusted, and they're working on it.
Mm-hmm. What do you feel like was that impact? Did you see that in your wife's career, or do you feel like it was something that was more of an afterthought for yourself?
It's not an afterthought, but on the other hand, it didn't demonstrate my commitment every minute of every day and every week. It isn't that kind of change that's being made. It's little steps. You can't just walk in and start teaching physics to African children who have never been outside their village of 20 people.
Mm-hmm. Is there so do you feel like this would be something that if every single teacher were to experience what you've experienced, do you feel like we would make more progress, or do you feel like it would have it wouldn't really have that much of an effect?
Oh, I think it is a valuable experience for the African schools as well as for the teachers, and it's an experience for teachers that no way, if there weren't an organized effort, like it wouldn't have to be the United States government, but it could be, and that those kinds of things have to be seen in a perspective of where they might have been without you, or where they might be if they get 2 more years of schooling with really competent teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what would happen?
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like there was anything that you would have liked to have, that you feel like if people were to really understand, actually, hang on, how do I word this? Is there anything that you feel like if people had more backing behind you, you would have been able to accomplish faster or better during your time as a chairperson? Or do you feel like that is not something that is really relevant?
Oh, I think it's relevant. I don't know how you measure it. That's hard to say. But I think it's relevant. You know, you just have to think about the circumstances and what the background and what the future looms ahead, thinking what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any final thoughts here, or like any words you want to impart here? Or like I don't have too many more questions. Well, actually, I do have one more question. How do you how do you feel about how your grandchildren have been learning throughout their? How do you feel about their education?
Oh, I think they're getting a good education, and I don't know. Again, it's very hard to measure these things. What makes a good student, or what makes a good teacher, what makes a good school. It's hard to do that. You know, you'd think by this time they've been having schools since Plato and Aristotle.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think you'd have it down and have a solution for things, but that's not true. You don't. And I think that our children are doing well. And I think you had a lot of good questions. I hope my answers are adequate to meet whatever your assignment was.
They've been very helpful, Grandpa. Don't worry. If anything, my questions are a little less than adequate, but yours are definitely gonna really make something be good for some kind of narrative that I can piece together. Also, but do you have any last words of wisdom that you want to impart before we finish here today? Or
Well, I just to commend you in setting this up and doing it. I know it's an assignment, but assignments are vary in their value and in what they produce. And I think you did a great job.
thanks, Grandpa.